Good morning again, y'all. Thank you for your patience. Just another second. We are also, I've already said it before, but we're on Facebook Live, so the community is also tuning in for this event. But I do want to thank all of you for coming out and your patience as we've been getting things started. Very much appreciated. This event is actually an opportunity for us to talk about the educational options that we have. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay. The educational options that we have. Cumberland County is the top county in the state that takes opportunity scholarships. So our parents are very interested, parents and guardians are very interested in school choice and opportunity scholarships and all of that. So this event definitely is a very important one. So only one that we'll have this year. It's the only one that we'll have this year. Well, the only one we think we'll have this year. We might have another one following this, but we'll see. I won't talk about that. All right. So we have an excellent panel of guests here, guest speakers. First, we've got Juan Graham, and on the screen you're also going to see the information. But let me also point you to this here. This is going to have the resources or the information that you're going to want to know about each of these brilliant people up here, and also the organizations that they represent. So just feel free to look at this a little bit later. But we've got Quan, we've got our Representative Diane Wheatley. Excuse me, let me go back to Ms. Quan Graham. Quan Graham is the Director for Parents for Educational Freedom. I had the honor of getting to know her, goodness, maybe 6 months ago. I'm not even sure how long it was. She actually helped me quite a bit with understanding the educational options and the importance of parental freedom, actually, to decide where your children are going to go to school. So there's more information about her, and I'll get into more details as I go along. Representative Diane Wheatley, which if you're not familiar, she is House Representative for District 43, also very instrumental with educational choice and opportunity scholarships. So we love our Representative Diane Wheatley. And then we have Dennis English, who is a partner with We Charter. Also got to know him a few months back, and we've become friends in education. So I love that. Hang on, should I pause? That's on live. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, they got it. All right. Before we get started, though, I want you to know that this is an interactive forum. So if you have questions, there have been quite a few questions about the Opportunity Scholarship and what's available and what the qualifications are. So you should have postcards or index cards, I'm sorry. If you have questions, then you'll get one of these if you haven't already for Gloria, who is right over here with her hand raised and a pen. And then once you have your questions, then I'll ask those from here and we'll have our panelists answer. All right. Let me just make sure we're fully set up before we get going. While I'm waiting, please welcome our panelists. Join me in welcoming our panelists. And they've all traveled in, so thank you very much. Sincerely, thank you for that. All right. Looks like we're almost ready here. You're good. All right, so we're actually going to start with some basic questions, and then we can move into a little more complex. So just to make sure everyone understands what the Opportunity Scholarship is, what is the Opportunity Scholarship in North Carolina, and just expand on it. So I'll give that to any of the three of you, whoever wants to take it.
I'm happy to go first. Welcome everybody, thank you for the invitation here. The Opportunity Scholarship is a state-funded program that assists families with private school tuition and school fees. And so the Opportunity Scholarship amount is based on the total household income, and they determine the household income tier based on how many family members are in that household. So you would look at the number of people in the household, that would give you the scholarship amount. And then for this scholarship, if selected, out of the lottery, then you could take that to the school of your choice, and all schools have to be a participating school.
So to that point that you said all schools have to be a participating school, so can you be a charter school or a private school and not be participating?
So the difference between the Opportunity Scholarship being an option, educational option for families, is that in the private school world, which is an option, there is tuition fees for a child to attend the school. In the public charter school realm, while it's still an educational option, it is free because it is a public school. So you would not use the Opportunity Scholarship at a public charter school because there is no tuition and there are no school fees to attend.
All right, thank you. How are the Opportunity Scholarship funds distributed? And that's anybody.
Yeah, so I'll jump in real quick. So you all may understand that the allocation of the student's funding is based on the child. And so the funding actually is what we call a allotment. And so the monies follow the child. And so basically, let's say it was $7,000, that child would actually be able to go take those funds and use it towards a private school of their choice. So it's really more or less the funding isn't technically coming from, it's really coming from the actual pot of money that's already in place in the counties anyway. Does that make sense?
It does. So there has been a conversation recently, or a news report actually, that said that the money does not follow the child. So is there a circumstance where it doesn't follow the child?
No, I mean, it's pretty, I think that's maybe complicating things. It's really more or less, since we're going to allow a parent to send their child to a private school, those funds based on, as we said, the income, which is a tier level, right? Those funds would already be allotted to that school system in place anyway. So it's really what it is. It's actually just the monies that the child has already had in place for the funding that where they go to school, it would be actually allotted to that private school.
Okay, thank you. Now somebody, I'm not sure who it was that mentioned it, but somebody mentioned, I believe it was you, Dennis, something about the tiers. And I know that the tiers are income levels, and then you get distribution based on your income. Can you explain a bit of that and of how that would work? There's been talk about how, some Elon Musk, for example, assuming that it's not been expanded in this question, Elon Musk would be able to get the Opportunity Scholarship and send his child to private school, and that's actually been said publicly. So can you explain how that works?
I think in California or Texas.
I think one of the fundamental conversations that need to be had when you talk about school choice is that every parent that is in the state pays taxes, fundamentally. And so this is a conversation about the parents having the freedom to use their taxpayer dollars to follow their child to the school of their choice, whether it is your district school, whether it is a public charter school, and now with the recent expansion, it would be the private school of your choice. Because again, private school families do pay taxes. So with the money following the child, the way the Opportunity Scholarship, thanks to our legislative body, has been expanded, is the amount of your scholarship depends on the amount of your household income. So those that are most in need, which we would consider tiers 1 and 2, they get the most scholarship. So if you did have a wealthy family or someone of a lot of money, that comes from a lot of money, their scholarship based on their income is less. So what's the range? You have the most in need getting up to $7,400, and those that make the most getting $3,300. Again, this is their taxpayer money following their child. If you had that same wealthy person decide that they wanted to send their child to a public charter school, their state-funded taxpayer money would follow their child to that charter school. So the concept, when you're looking at just the way the money follows the child, is my taxpayer money follows the child. If I wanna go to McDonald's, my tax-paying money, I choose to put my money in McDonald's. If I wanna go to Burger King, my taxpayer money, I pay taxes on the food at Burger King. It's really the same fundamental concept. We have choice as parents in every other aspect of our daily lives. But now we are expanding it to education, which every child doesn't learn the same. You could have two kids, I'm Zen and Mason's mom. They both learn differently, but they're under my household. I may decide to send one to a district and one to a charter school. As a right, I think that I should be able to do that.
And if you look at the amount of jobs being created in North Carolina today, and you look at those folks that are transitioning from other states daily, fastest growing population, Raleigh, some of these areas are the fastest growing in the nation. Those parents, you better believe they're looking at where their kid is gonna go to school. If I'm coming from California, if I got a job at Lenovo, I'm gonna be looking at, okay, we're gonna buy this house, and matter of fact, our child is in the 5th grade. Where are we sending our child? And they're gonna do all the homework. They're gonna do all the research, and they're gonna say, you know what, that school in our neighborhood is a D, performing at a D. So you know what that parent's gonna do? They're gonna look at other options. Private, charter, and you know what, 45 minutes down the road is a charter school that's got a B, or a private school that's an A. So you got to think about this at a 50,000 foot view. I think a lot of us get emotional about this stuff, but it's economic development. And our legislature's job is to ensure that our state has the viability to bring these companies in for more economic growth. And so the options is not just for us, it's for people who are coming here to help us grow our economy. So I just want to change to help a little bit of the dynamics, because I know we get deep into the weeds about the emotional side of this, but we got to really look at this from an economic development perspective.
And when children are going to school and parents are looking at those options, the public schools, if it's a non-performing school, and now you know that, and there's a lot of discussion going on about how the public schools are going to have to inform parents of how they are doing as far as their testing and their performance. Then parents now have an option to be able to look at a very performing school that is meeting the needs of that family, and they are all very different. Charter schools are interesting in that they can have a theme. They could be like for the STEM with science and technology, engineering and mathematics, or the school might be musical and its theme of children that are really extremely gifted and have musical talents, and the parent wants to see that developed. And the public school is limited in that. When I was on the school board, the public schools were leaning towards offering magnet schools, and we call, the schools were really thriving. But, there's so many different things that are happening in the public schools that parents have decided that they want to take a look at other options for their children, because that's their most prized possession in the world, and we need to be, developing those opportunities for them. The scholarships, unfortunately, are limited still, and this past session we tried to get past some more monies to put into opportunity scholarships, and that means with that business and economic end of it that you're talking about, we're gonna see more, people that are going to look at opening schools, because I know that there are caps in a lot of these private schools, private Christian schools, the private public schools, and they're looking at, meeting growth. They're gonna have to have money for buildings. This money that is going into opportunity scholarships, are not gonna be, paying for the buildings that, these folks are gonna need, to be able to use these scholarships. So it's complicated, in a lot of ways. When we talk about the money following the child, that's something, that bears a lot of, I believe, discussion, not only on the scholarship side that we're looking, or vouchers, whichever you want to refer to, and how we're going to change, funding of public schools as well. And the monies that go into opportunity scholarship, is not like charter schools, in that we're looking at, that I believe, isn't it about 11,000 per public school student? And at tier 1, we're saying 7,400. So there's still a wide gap to the, money per student in the public schools versus the money per student that's allocated in the, private schools.
And our legislative body, that difference between what the per pupil spending is in your traditional public school or your public schools and the amount of your scholarship, that is being reinvested. That difference is being reinvested where? Back into our public schools. So this scholarship really serves and can serve children across the board, because that difference is still going back into the public school system. And so they are still getting funding for that. But you know, the conversation really has to change between one against the other. This is not a conversation when you're dealing with children that one system is going to harm another. It's going to harm your child. One system doesn't harm. It's about what this child needs. What is the exposure that this option is going to provide? Homeschooling is one of the fastest growing options in the state. There's a reason because of that. Parents aren't just deciding, hey, it's new and shiny over here, I'm gonna just leave and go over here. Any parent that I've talked to, or I've spoke with, or my team has spoke with, there is a reason why they feel this option is more effective for their family, and they're able to voice that. And so that's the conversation that we need to have. Not that one is better, it may be different, but ultimately it serves the needs of the child. And that's really what the conversation is about. The needs of that one child, individually. And there's a lot of children in North Carolina.
I'm actually glad that you called that out. Did you have something to add?
I think the needs of a parent is personal.
Correct.
And, you know, this is a kitchen table conversation with your family about where your child should go. This is personal for me. My child is entering the first grade, Briella.
Oh, you're just starting.
Yes, I started late, but I had to make the choice.
Yes.
You know, after the pandemic, we were like trying to figure out, okay, where does she go to school? And I wish to God that I could send Briella to the school that was literally 5 minutes away. But we went in there and walked through the school, and the kids was telling the principal off. And you had kids in the hallway because of this, you know, just disciplinary issues. And Briella, she's COVIDized. So, I mean, I couldn't imagine putting her in school with some disciplinary issues when she was already trying to figure out how to have a conversation with the child. So when we look at why do parents want to have options, it's personal. It's what is the right issue? Is it anxiety issues? Is it bullying issues? Is it technology issues? So it runs a gamut, and we just got to be mindful of the stuff that, you know, the choice is theirs. And I'll stop there. But
Yeah, and just to add to that, you know, the parent is with all these options, is able to be far more involved in their children's education. But this doesn't mean that we are saying that we don't think public schools need the same kind of support they do. It's vital. What's made America our great country has been our public education system over the years. There are just changes that have happened, and parents are wanting the best for their kids, and this is just one of the options.
We're a global society. If you all in the audience recognize, we're not competing with the kids down the street. We're competing with kids in China. Let's be real. And at the end of the day, those kids are about education. And so, as a parent, I got to make sure Briella is competing with the kid in China and India. So we're thinking globally here, and I'm not the only parent thinking on this level. So why would I send my child to a school that's underperforming? She's already behind. So let's, like you said, Representative, let's not forget about those schools that aren't performing, because there's going to be a shift in how we operate those schools going forward. Am I right, gentlemen over here, Mr. Moore? We're going to have to change how we operate our traditional schools going forward. And you all in the audience, don't think that it's the folks on the panel. You all in the audience going to have to roll up your sleeves with us and help us change the narrative and change the policies and move the ship for the traditional schools, because we cannot keep letting them use the same narrative that charter schools and private schools is just going to take us down. Sorry, that excuse is just not going to work. I know it's scary, but this is reality. And as policy, folks like myself who bring legislators together, these are the ones who have to move that ship. And so it's up to you, because they need you all to say, do it. And if they hear y'all say, okay, we see private schools are successful, we see the charters are successful, we know where the parents want, but we see these traditional schools over here, grass ain't cut, nobody really putting any effort into the situation. But we're going to have to do both. We're going to have to walk and chew gum at the same time. Sorry, I know we're just taking over your...
That's the purpose of this, right? So it should be a full-on dialogue. I love it. I love it. I'm actually a product of private school, public school, and homeschool. And for me, it was a required step in my education. So I went to public school. Well, actually, I went to private school first, I think. And then there was a time in my teens that I went, and then homeschool. And then I went to high school. But when I went to high school, there was an adjustment issue. I had my own issues. So I ended up having to move to a school that was like 30 minutes away. So if that option wasn't available, my education would have looked very different. I was failing in one school, went to another school 30 minutes away with a different environment, different motivations, different programs available, and became a thriving student from there. So it is very important that we keep this option open, and I know all of you did it, but even for those online, clearly Cumberland County gets it, because Cumberland County is asking for it consistently. So thank you for all of these details. We know, and you've already touched on it a bit, how public schools are, how there's a conversation about how opportunity scholarships and school choice is hurting public schools. And yes, there might be an impact on public schools. Actually, there is an impact on public schools. And you've already made it very clear that it's not necessarily hurting public schools, and it is about the child's education. But what do you see the long-term implications for public schools, for children or families that continue to shift to charter or private schools? How do you see that?
Can I start with that? I see public schools looking more like the classical academies that we started when I was chairing the Board of Education, and we actually had the people that were opting into schools that were not in their district because they were offering, either engineering, One of my favorite was Finance Academy. We couldn't get enough of going to visiting those classes with those children, and they're much different, and they actually look more like this community college would look. And that is one of the things I see happening to public schools that'll only make it enrich the curriculums, and so that giving more options in the public schools. And that is a good thing. We already started that in Cumberland County. And there are children in their junior and senior years that have classes here at the community college. Well, that's just a partnership that is needed between the public schools, the community college. Fayetteville State University also engages with the public schools. And I see that being expanded where these are options for parents as well. And I think that you're looking at that teaching will take a kind of a different place where teachers will be actually focusing. I'm a nurse, good grief. I couldn't go back to nursing right now and do what I did 40 years ago. Everybody's a specialist. So I see the public schools competing. I see them offering a product better because they're going to have to. And they know that. I believe that they're in tune with that. I would think the Board of Education people that are here that are running understand that. And that's going to be a focus for those that we elect to Board of Education to have the vision and the willpower to work with superintendents who also have the vision. Otherwise, if they don't, then we're going to see a bleaker side to public schools. So I have faith that they'll embrace the changes and that we'll see good things come from public schools, but you will still have the need for the other schools because of the religious aspect, and the people want certain things taught, and even Americanism, the things that we talk about a lot, but we haven't taken action on. So it's just, there's a lot of change coming, and it's not bad. It's good for our children.
And I'll piggyback on that. I'm so glad our representatives talked about the shift that's coming. And it's not just me, thank goodness. I thought it was the Holy Spirit. I was like, whoa, oh man, I got the idea. Well, I just had a conversation with a gentleman here running for school board. The representative just said it. So this ain't, I ain't that smart. It's going to be a shift. And if you talk to industry leaders, let's take the electrical trade right now, okay? Just that one industry, okay? They're getting old. The average electrician is up in his, I don't know, but they're retiring. 60s. You put a child in electrical, let's say you start them off in whatever, elementary, 8th, 10th, get into community college, now you got a job. I was shocked in the conversation we had in the back there. You said, what would be the money they would make after graduating and finishing community college?
Time to 30 would be a millionaire.
Wow.
So now we're creating millionaires from the industries. So why wouldn't the school system be ready to change in that direction? So Simone, the answer to your question is, let's have conversations with business leaders, the industry, and say, I say we fill the room up with the industry leaders and bring some of the superintendents in the room and let them hear the industry leaders say, and then the community college system come together and say, what is the need and how will we move North Carolina forward? Because we always led in education. Now we can do it at a whole nother level. And so the legislators that here, we have to really lead that conversation. That's what I'll be doing, thank goodness. God has got me in a great place to do this work over the next 3 months, to really be a solution provider not just the arguing and the bickering and the fighting. I'm done with that. If you ain't got a solution, I'm walking out the room. Our kids mean too much for us to be fighting about this issue. We already know they could be millionaires. Why would you stop them? It takes $1 million to buy a house today. I'll end on that.
Okay, good point. One of the things that's come up quite a bit is about discrimination, or the potential discrimination or segregation. So what are your views on how the Opportunity Scholarship, well, what are your views of that and what it looks like for you?
You know, I think parents are the protector of their children. Parents are the ones that guide their children. Parents understand that there are systematic problems in every arena. Healthcare, education, housing. There's always an issue of one getting more, one not getting more. And so when you look at a school, the parent is the one that's going to go into the school and say, is this a good culture, academic, just overall feeling? I'm not going to send Zen and Mason to a school that I feel like they're going to encounter racism. I'm going to choose a school that's inclusive, that is all in with who they are and can build them. So while there may be schools, there may be restaurants, there may be car dealerships that have some biases when they come to the table, schools, even if that is the case, the parents are going to be the deciding factor. And what we do know is that if that is a bias, if there is racism, if there is something that's going to harm, the parent is going to raise a flag to that. And then what happens to the school? Other parents in the school say, hey, you mistreated a child? The child with disabilities? Well, now we're going to bring, so there may be things that are out there, but once parents get a hold of that, they're going to fight against that. That might be a change in the school leadership. That might be a change in the teachers there. There may be something that has to be done. So is there racism? Is there biases? But that's in every facet of America. We just have to fight against that. And with the Department of Non-Public Instruction overseeing private schools, just like in the public school, there are measures that you can file complaints if that is happening. But parents vote and they say yes or no to a school by their feet. If there's a school that parents are leaving in droves, that school's gonna fail because they need whether it's public or private, they need the parents and the students in the seat. So again, there are biases, there is racism, there are discriminations against certain classes, certain races, but in every facet we have to fight against that. And parents leave saying, I'm not gonna send my child here, I'm gonna send my child over here because they won't be treated well there.
Okay.
And to add to that, if you look at the schools that are being chartered, and if you look at the student body and the faculty, and you are going to see that there's a whole lot of minorities that have opted to start these schools, to participate in these schools. Doesn't have to do with racism. It has to do with non-performing schools that their children are not learning. They care about their children. People that are going to opt out is because they feel like something's very wrong for their children, and you're looking at just a gamut of different ethnic groups that are also participating. So I see this as almost a uniting, refreshing place that people are coming together, and they're coming together for their children.
Okay, and kind of go
I
ahead.
think she had her hand raised.
Yeah.
I have a question from the audience
Oh,
that's
sure.
kind of on the same line. So one of the questions is, in my experience, even when schools have the resource to support children with other abilities, there often seems to be a disparity in the representation of Black and Brown students. How will these issues be addressed to ensure that all children, regardless of their race, have equal access to a quality education?
And because that is my question, if I may, I would like to speak to the question.
Can we hold for a mic? So
would like to start with saying that my child, is a product of the Opportunity Scholarship. Along with that, my child is on the spectrum. So yes, I did do a lot of research to find a school. Find a school that had met all the qualities, had the IEP, the 504. I went to the school, and at the school, if I may say, which is personal, I felt like I was being interviewed. And I felt that way coming from a social worker who is active in the community. So I met all the qualities of the school. We have the scholarship. However, I didn't hear anything. Statistical data did show where this school had 6% Black and brown students. But this was a school that had the 504, IEP, transportation. It met all the qualifications. I don't understand why it was just 6%. Just like you said, I'm also military. So a solution to the problem I would see is when schools aren't getting the scholarship, because yes, we all are looking for something better. Okay, let's look at, okay, how is this school accepting? So that it is fair for everyone.
And so,
And thank you for allowing me to speak.
yeah, no, thank you for the question. So what I hear you saying is that you did get into the school, but when you look at the balance of the ratio between the different groups, it's not as diverse as you'd like it to be.
No, ma'am, I did not get into the school.
Okay, so they said they couldn't accommodate the IEP or the 504, or do you feel it's race-based?
No, ma'am, they can accommodate the IEP, the 504.
Gotcha.
That was discussed.
Gotcha.
But they do have the professionals, certified professionals on staff that do meet IEP 504. They do accept children that have other abilities.
Gotcha.
However, the next procedure was for them to call me back to invite my child in to be tested.
Okay,
I never received a phone call back.
gotcha.
And to add, before I even went to the school for the interview, I set up the things, I ensured that they had a slot for my child.
Right.
I asked those questions.
Right. I think, one of the things, and I talk to a lot of parents about engagement, involvement, I'm a mama bear, anybody asks me about Zena Mason, I'm a mama bear. There are schools that there are policies or there are procedures that are missed. There are things that you have people that come in with biases. Again, I'm not saying that that's right, I'm saying that we have to fight against that, and we have to expose that. And if, in your case, it could have been the school, Department of Non-Public Instruction, they do have a complaint line. They do have representatives at the Department of Non-Public Education, that you can file a complaint, that you can have them look into the school. There were parents that brought some attention to some schools that things weren't just right, and the North Carolina State Assistance Authority, they shut the school down. They could not shut the school down. They couldn't take the funds from Opportunity Scholarship and ESA. So I'm not saying that it's not out there. What I am saying is that we parents have a voice to bring notice to that. There are venues that you can complain and you can bring spotlight to that. As particularly with SEAA, they will investigate it. They will make sure that they are following what they need to follow. And if they're not, they take them off the list and they can't receive the funds anymore. So there is accountability, but it is up to the parent to bring voice to that. If you want to talk to me after and we can talk about that, I'd be happy to walk you through that process. But I am no nonsense. I'm a mama bear. When kids, the policies are not followed or procedures are not followed, we as a parent body have to just be the ones to bring attention to that.
Also, you might, when you touch base with the school, did you get a response on why your child wasn't accepted? Did they give you any response at all?
I did not.
Okay, I'm with you. You can file the complaint, and when you're through, if you're here, I have a couple suggestions also.
It's a good thing when you say, I got my state representative looking into this. So, I'm just saying.
Thank you for that question. Actually, I'm going to go to a few other questions that people had in the audience. Let's see. Okay, I've heard someone say a child was kicked out of a school. Are there any reasons why a child would be kicked out? Behavioral, financial, cap on students in a classroom, I believe it says grades.
Are you talking about just in the private school?
I'm not
option,
sure who-
or in all options? Yes, ma'am.
I guess when we were at that last, it had the, library.
Hold on, let's get your mic. She's coming. Nope, stay there, Jessica.
No, you stay there. We want you to relax.
Whenever we were at that library for the debate and stuff, I heard a gentleman mention that, and, he was saying, you know, like, well, you know, this kid was kicked out or something. So I was wondering, like, what would be a reason why someone who receives funds like that would be kicked out of the school? Is it behavioral issues? Is it, grades? Is it, like I said, a cap on the number of students in classrooms? Because I know some places, they don't want a lot of kids in classrooms.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's been my experience with talking with families and just in all options. So even in traditional public school, there are parameters that someone would be expelled from a school. When a family goes to open house, when they start coming in, they have the student school handbook that says discipline-wise, let's say it's discipline-wise, if you violate any of these, here are your tiers of repercussions or consequences. Even in the charter school world, it's very clear, here's our behavioral, here's what a non-negotiable is. If you do this, you have to leave the school. So in every option except homeschool, I don't know if mama can. That's why I didn't homeschool, that's why I didn't say. But, outside of homeschool, I don't know if you kick out someone out the home and then police not look for you, but anyway. But every school, private, now there may be tighter reins in the private school world because they're theme-based or they're maybe religious-based, there may be other things that, as far as discipline or things that we don't allow, you know, earrings, tattoos, you know, things like that that parents have to adhere to. But again, the choice to put your child in that option, even if it's traditional, you are agreeing to what is in that handbook.
That's right.
And so every parent needs to understand that if I choose to go to this private school, I had a conversation with a school leader where it was a 16-year-old wonderful young lady who wanted to have jewelry, but the private school said you can't have jewelry on. So she had to make a decision. Either you're gonna stay and not wear the jewelry because that's what you're signing up for, or you're gonna have to go to a school that allows you to wear jewelry. Again, it's still parent-driven. Parents still decide that they agree to whatever those policies are, so.
Was there any context around the kid getting kicked out?
Right.
Was it disciplinary or was it
That's-
overcrowded?
That's the question, is in what scenario would they have been kicked out? So I don't recall the
It's
context.
broad.
It's very broad.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very broad.
It's something I had heard from another person.
Okay.
So I just wanted
Yeah.
to know what that could have been.
Yeah, Gloria was also at the event, so she may have some insight.
So I think the question comes from where, it's touched on a little bit, where the question is whether or not the money follows the child. So the discussion was that the child would receive the scholarship and then be kicked out of the school. And if kicked out of the school, they were saying that the money did not follow the child when they had to return back, let's say, to a public education. So that was where the conversation or the question was, that, you know, some of these students are receiving the scholarship, and that scholarship money goes to then the school of choice. However, the student is kicked out of the school, and it was almost led to say that, is this on purpose, that the money's there, and now the money does not follow the student if they have to return back to their public education.
Yeah, that,
And hearing that, this is not the first time, and Jessica, I believe we talked about this. If it's a flaw in the way the scholarships are written, that'll have to be adjusted. But when you look at the tiers, if you're a tier 1 student, you're getting $7,400. The school gets 11,000 plus, and probably knowing the the way the government works, because these are government-funded schools, they probably have a deadline where, and Jackie, you know the answer to this better than anybody, but probably so many days into the school year, you get all your funding, and that's it. So the child comes back to school, and even though there's monies where they didn't get, you know, the opportunity scholarship, or even with any other funding and vouchers, that they didn't get the full amount, but the deadline's gone. So there's probably some checking into this part of funding to see if there's maybe something that needs to be addressed with legislation.
I agree with that. I think that the way that the way that education is funded is a fundamental question that needs to be addressed. With the Opportunity Scholarship, the payments for the year come in 2 installments. They come in the fall and they come in the spring. So if a child was, you know, I forgot the word I'm looking for, I'm losing my word. They violated, that's the word I was looking for, a procedure that would cause them to have to say, hey, you have to leave the school. While the private school would have already gotten the money for the semester, which is only half, so if you get $7,400, they would only get half of that for the fall. That money is not sent to the school for the spring because they're no longer at the school. So the accountability part for the Opportunity Scholarship is money is not released to the school until the parent checks a box, approves a form that says, hey, this school has said, here's your tuition, here's your scholarship amount, and here's your balance. Because let's be clear, there's usually balances left for families to have to pay in the private school option. But, so once that is released, if that child moves to another option, while of course the teacher and the school needs it for operating expenses for that semester, that money will not follow the child because it'll come to them in the spring and say, here's your payment, is your child still there? Me as a parent, I'm gonna say, no, my child's not there anymore. So then that money is not released. So that's the accountability on the Opportunity Scholarship. And even the ESA, which is the second part or second program for children with disabilities, that is also released in that same method. It's only for the semesters, and the parents approve that that child is there, and yes, release that money.
Okay, thank you. Was there a question over there? Or we got it, okay. Okay, so,
Well, that answers my question. I was saying in Fayetteville, you know, we have kids moving in and out.
yeah.
Military.
all the time.
It doesn't necessarily have to be because they got kicked out of school.
Yeah.
It could be that they moved to a different school system, a different state,
Right.
you know.
And for that in the public school, whether it's public charter or your traditional district, that funding model where families move, is particularly in this area, that would need to be addressed because we know that for traditional and public charters, that 20th day determines what that allotment's gonna be for that school. So all students, you know, they say, come on the 20th day, please send your child, because that number determines what their budget's gonna be. Now, that's a legislative thing that if someone in the traditional public moves to a charter or vice versa, what does that funding look like to follow that child? If that needs to be tweaked, to your point, that needs to be looked at. But this is a systematic thing because school choice is now so prevalent, because families are able to shift based on the need of their child, the funding model has to be addressed.
And I don't think a lot of people think about how schools are funded. I was a little, when I first went into getting elected on the Board of Education, you have local funding, you have state funding, and you have federal funding. So all of those different areas that are funding the public schools have different rules, and so there's a lot of regulation, and maybe we need to uncomplicate that a little bit.
And one of the things I'll say as a parent, as an advocate for parents and for children, is that the choice movement is because while you're working out those tweaks, while you're looking and voting, Our children still need to learn. You know, if I have a kindergartner, they've got to be on point by 3rd grade. You know why? Because statistics show that if a child's not reading by 3rd grade, they may be on a different path, right, to graduation. So if I've got a school district that's had some complications, that my schools are not where they should be fundamentally, what are my other options? Because I've got to get my child to 3rd grade. I'm in a very big district. I'll just say I'm from a very big district. And their plan to get children proficient is 5 to 6 years. That's their plan. We have a strategic plan. We want children to be proficient. With all the nuances, they're talking about 5 or 6 years. Well, I'm sorry, when Zen and Mason were in 1st grade, I didn't have 5 or 6 years because 3rd grade was coming up. So I had to look at where my child was, how could they get those fundamental skills. Even in high school, you got 4 years. I need them to be ready to get a scholarship because Dennis Graham is not paying for, you know, any college. So we were to your point about the community college jobs. When you start getting to middle school, it moves fast. And so I need to look at graduation rates. I need to look at how they are compared globally to their peers. You know, it's a numbers game. You know, are they going to be against 400 graduating class, or are they going to be against 90? Well, if they're against a 90, 9,500 graduation pool, and he has a 4.5, he might be in the top 10 of that grade. Well, what do colleges look at? What's your GPA? What's your ranking? What's your SAT scores? To qualify for certain scholarships at the college level. So when you start getting into middle and the high school, while our wonderful legislators, we appreciate that they are looking at funding in public school, it does need to be done, but our children don't have years. We're going to deal with them one way or another. So parents have to be at the forefront to say, I will support the traditional public school in the areas that they're getting it right. Families don't leave free if it's working for them. But you cannot let kids slip through the cracks for a system. It's just a change, it's a tweak, we've got to do something different. Systems work when they work well. Systems hurt when there are things that need to be fixed. And we need to be able to ebb and flow based on your child's age, based on your child's grade, based on your zip code, and based on where you live. You have to be able to flow in between that.
And to piggyback off of that, what you made me think of is the magnet schools inside of our traditional system.
Absolutely.
The magnet schools were designed
That's right.
to, hey, look, I'm gonna keep it real. Take those kids who are exceptional and place them in a school. And so you talk about choice. The traditional school's been doing it for the longest time with magnets.
That's a great point.
So you talk about segregation and all this stuff. Don't go there. It's been happening. You know, cherry picking the kids and all of that. I mean, so we got to really look at, you know, pull the curtain back and really think about, okay, now is it just competition, right? Well, it's not competition, it's our kids. And so, thank you for making that point.
Yeah, and I would challenge representatives to look at their own districts. Look at their own districts and see what the quality of schools are in their own districts. When you have a district, especially the larger districts, that have zip codes that have failing schools, and I'm not talking about, they had a couple of bad years. I'm talking about Zen being in, saying 2 schools are still DNFs. I've seen it, I know it, that's a personal thing, right? So if I would put Zen in what I felt didn't serve him or push him to his full potential, would he have gotten the scholarship that he did? I'm bragging because I'm a mama. But would he have gotten the scholarship that he got? Would Mason have gotten the academic scholarship even though he played soccer, right? Would he have had those opportunities if I would have been locked in to my district schools that I just didn't feel were going to give them the exposure that they needed? I was able to move and shift, and every child deserves that opportunity. Zen and Mason are my favorites, but they are the norm for most kids that are in districts right now. We did go to traditional for elementary. We found something else in the charter school world for middle school and high school. It just was the best for our family. But what if I wouldn't have had that opportunity? They would not be adulting like they are now. I know that. It would have been a different, to your point, it would have been a different experience for both of them. And I'm just thankful that I was able to have that opportunity with choice.
Absolutely. All right, a few more questions. We actually got some questions online as well. So this one is from Facebook Live. What policies are implemented and in place that bridge the gap that this creates in education with our children with disabilities? And we actually may have spoken on that already. Anything we want to add to that? Because I can skip that one.
I would like to add a little to that. Our children that have disabilities, or we used to say special needs, have an IEP, which is their individual education plan. And parents need, I had a child that had special needs, and I was on that IEP. I wrote the IEP. You have to be able to bridge the gap as a parent for you think doing choice. When you have a special needs child, you've got to be involved not only as a parent with the principal of the school, with the psychologist of the school, the nurse of the school, that you might have medical needs that have to come into the school. And you need to understand that your child has lots of options, and you need to write those into that IEP. And if you want your child to be able to be in music with everybody that's in the school in their music class taking PE, you need to have them pulled out of class for special reading instruction or for their physical therapy. All that has to be in that plan, and trust me, if you don't do it, you're not going to bridge the gaps. You're not going to get anything that you need for your child if you are not well versed in what's going to happen during the day. And there is a lot that has been done. The policies are there. They're written into law. But if you don't, and I could, sit here for the next hour. We could talk every policy that has been written that I know about, and we still wouldn't get to things that are there for your child. So you have to really and continually work with your folks that are congressmen and senators, and also at the state level, but with your Board of Education. And they need to know that there are things not being done. So you have to be extremely involved. And if you're going to go to a private school, you need to also have that IEP written out, and written out.
Say that, yeah.
And that it is, that they can meet those needs.
Right.
And if they can't, you're going to have to probably figure out how you're going to pay for it. And there are other, and I can't wait to talk to this lady. There are some other options out there for funding. So anyway.
Yeah, one of the things I'll say is you're absolutely right with the public school system and the IEP. That has always been the driving guide for families to understand. Here's what your child needs to be successful in the classroom. Here's the support your child needs in the classroom. So the IEP, to your point, Representative, is very, very important. Part of the Opportunity Scholarship is based on, the Opportunity Scholarship is based on income. But the ESA Plus is the second state-funded program. The criteria to even apply for that is the IEP. So even in the private school world, they understand the importance of having the IEP. Now, I have not seen a private school that hasn't understand what an IEP means. It means what level of support does that child need in the classroom. Now, a private school may call it something different. It might be a PEP or a, something else, but the document or the documentation of the needs of the child, private schools do that also. The good thing about the ESA is that you can use those funds not only for tuition, but for related services to what? The IEP. So if you have a child that has an IEP that needs speech therapy and you're at a private school that just because of the way they're maybe smaller, they don't have the operational funding for a speech therapist, you can use that ESA funds for the speech therapy fees. So it all goes hand in hand. Again, we're talking about a conversation about meeting the needs of a child. In the private school world, in the public school world, the IEP for a child with disability is still the driving factor. And so it's up to the parent, to your point, to understand what does the child need and does this private school meet those needs? If not, you need to go to another school. You can't go to a school because it's not new and shiny and it's right down the street. You have to go to a school that is meeting the needs of your child. Still driven by who? The mom, the daddy, or the grandma.
And it is difficult to move down the street when you have a special needs child.
Yeah.
We know that.
Yeah.
So, being informed, being aggressive, being the advocate that is almost like a lawyer. Just say that.
I think one of the things that parents are not used to, and I'm not talking about any of us in the room, because if you're here on a Saturday or you're online on a Saturday, you're involved, right? You're keyed in. You want the best for your child. But there was a time where you could just drop your child off at school up the street. They go to the middle school feeder. They go to high school feeder. No problem. They go off to college. It's just different. The world is different. The way things are now, it's just different. And systematically, some systems don't work for some kids. You gotta find an alternative or they fall through the cracks.
All right, we have another question. Would you consider making the opportunity scholarship, or excuse me, the opportunity funds based on family income? I think it already is.
It is.
Do you have clarity on that? Was that you, Chris?
Well, not that question, you already answered that question. The other question I would have is, simply is, some students.
We're global on
Yeah.
live.
The question I have has to do with the students that, or the parents that want to send their school to a private or charter school, okay, that are disadvantaged. They're, living in the country and they don't have the transportation, to get them to that school for that opportunity. So is there a consideration or talk on how we can help those families, with transportation? And the other issue is, in public schools, they offer, food. They get free food and stuff. In the private and the charter schools, I'm sure they don't. You have to pay for it, and it costs. So is there consideration on how to help those families that want to use the opportunity funds, but they can't because they can't meet the other requirements? And this is something where we use our tax dollars to assist. We have a Department of Transportation.
Right.
We have a public assistance with EBT. So they get these funds that are available. Is there talk in the Semone how we can help those people?
Well, I haven't heard a lot of conversation about those issues. I will tell you that there are schools that you have to look at that do have transportation, and they're providing it with that, not only because they have lots of students, more students than actually come to school with their opportunity scholarship, and it's limited usually busing, but I do think there's an opportunity there for us, especially on the Education Committee, to look at those issues, and I'm sure that that will be a discussion. But I will tell you that transportation for charter schools is there for most of them. I've seen a lot of schools that have really gotten big that are chartered. The opportunity scholarship schools are still smaller that I have been able to visit. There may be some out there really big because of the number of students that they can house. So there's a lot that goes into getting these schools to where they can do the lunches. And I'm not too sure about the federal government because they're doing the free lunch thing. That isn't something that we might need to talk to the congressman about. However, they may already have something there that I'm not familiar with through the federal programs.
What,
Yeah, go ahead.
no,
I was just gonna speak to the charter schools again. When it comes to the rural communities, it is a challenge to provide choice because of the economic challenges that comes to teachers traveling to get to those areas. So leadership, and what I've seen when I'm in front of the Charter School Authority Board is that they're really favoring and advocating for schools to open in rural areas, right? We got enough in Charlotte. we know we got a lot of charter schools that it's just like, if you look at the dots, it's unbelievable the amount of charter schools in Charlotte and the Wake area. It's just, so when you look at the rural areas where choice is needed, I believe in the next 3 to 5 years, you'll see more charter schools, more transportation opportunities. Representative Hardister, he provided $1 million grant for allowing charter schools to actually get some transportation funding. So there's been legislators who are really pushing transportation, because that's just a dollar amount that don't go to charter schools. You just don't get that funding. So you'll see some charter schools that don't even have it. We ask, or they ask, what's your transportation plan when you're presenting a charter school? And if you don't have a transportation plan for certain areas, pickup areas where students can get opportunities to go, you probably won't get funded. You probably won't get approved for that charter school. So we are asking the tough questions in Raleigh when folks go up. But you're right, that rural area, we have to do a lot more and be intentional about it. It's just the leaders gotta be willing to step up and say, I got a school I'm gonna put in, Washington County. You know what I mean? It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, and that Hardister's bill was 100% supported on our side of the aisle, but he's going to be missed, but there are people who are going to be looking into doing everything they can to support charter schools and choice, but also the public schools as well, because we're responsible for all of them, not just the ones that are now looking at scholarships and doing different things.
one of the things that I think is the conversation going to transportation and lunch, you will not see, or it's not been my experience, let me say that. It's not been my experience that a school just doesn't want to provide transportation. A school just doesn't want to feed kids. When you're talking about educators building a school, whether it's private, whether it's home, whether it's traditional or charter, they are intentional of what? Serving children. It is the funding legislatively that is the biggest hindrance. I'm a board chair of a charter school. When we decided to become a charter school, we targeted a community of need. We took that on. But the social ramifications that our children have had to endure because of COVID and even before, where does that money come from? Well, usually it comes from fundraising and donations. Well, the economy is not one where families are just writing these checks. So when you come up against a school that doesn't have a lunch program or a private school that doesn't have transportation, you have to look at its size, you have to look at the capability and the area. Is it rural or is it in the inner city? Is it in a major city? But even getting a building to start a school is hard because the conversation is one option against the other. And so collectively, as a community, we are not supporting children, we're supporting and safeguarding our system that we personally believe in, which doesn't benefit the child. So the answer to your question is yes, every school would like to have transportation. Every private school would like to have free and reduced lunch, but that costs money. And because the educational funding model is not equal in all options, you see that give or take. You see some have something, some have another. And again, to be for one is not to be against the other. It's what does my child need? And if we're not looking at it through that lens, it pits one system against the other, and we're not funding systems, we're funding children. And so that money in every aspect needs to.
Yes, so during the summertime, families receive Sunbucks, and it comes on a card. Families that already receive EBT get to added funds for Sunbucks, which is the cost to feed the kids lunch during the summertime, because a lot of families use free and reduced lunches at public schools. So what if we extended Sunbucks throughout the year so that on a card, so that families could buy their children lunches? So the Sunbucks program just extends out for the people who are going to charter or private schools.
She's writing something down.
So that's a policy initiative?
That's a policy, right?
I say we talk after this, because that you just may have came up with a solution, right? And that's gonna take legislation, it's gonna take us going to Raleigh with that. Yeah, it's a great idea, we just gotta figure out how to move it down the field to get it done.
And you'll see private schools. There's a private school in New Bern, very small, 32 kids. She fights every day to have resources for her students. 32, but they're 32 important students, right? Because they're not being served by their district for whatever reason. No shade, whatever reason. But she fights with churches to provide lunches. She fights with businesses to give reduced prices. So to your point, they're fighting, particularly in the private school world, to get those resources because the funding isn't equal. It's still the same child that needs your taxpayer money to follow them. But I saw you taking some notes, so I'm happy about that.
And you called them Sunbucks. I just was out at the United Way and talked to some ladies that are working with the 501c to provide backpacks for weekend meals for children. And it was an interesting concept that they might expand into. I'm not really as familiar with, I knew that this was happening, but I really don't know all the particulars, so I'll be looking
That's
at more
provided by
homework.
the Department of Health and Human Services in North Carolina. That's where some of them come from.
Thank you.
Yes, another question.
Okay, so I'm still trying to phrase the question in my head. However, with the current stress that the opportunity scholarships are going to be placing on public schools, because I think the growing fear is that the students are going to leave the public school system, and then that money is going to go with it follows the student. So is there then with the current need for transportation in certain charter schools, like is there any way where the conversation can be had, because this is a progressive and changing and we need to fix the system that's out there, where the conversation can be had where, okay, the public school transportation, if you have students that need to go or attend to this type of skill set or this class, and it's offered or it's provided at this charter school, then you can open up those transportation doors in that conversation. The gentleman, when he spoke about magnet schools, that's something that, I'm from Woodbridge, Virginia, up north, 30 minutes south of DC, and that's one of the things that, it was a known thing for you to go to school, and then you go to your home school, and then sometimes you'd get bused to another school, and then that's where you would spend a couple of hours, and then you get bused back to the other school, and then that school will take you home, and it's only because of the assessment of the need that you have as a child. So if that's something that we can implement, then it's not the charter versus public versus private. It's more of, it's the focus on the need of the child, and then the funds go where they're going, where they're already destined to go. And it's just more of a cooperation type of effort. Is that something that can be
leveraged or fixed within the system?
Well, the magic word you just said was cooperation.
Correct.
And unfortunately, we have this us versus them attitude that we need to get rid of. And so what you're saying is let's try to start sharing some of these resources with traditional schools and charter schools. And in an ideal world, that would be great. But I think it's, as you can hear, the common thread here is money. And so if we could just get this money thing out of the way and start focusing on our kids, then we might be able to have some conversation about that. But I think that's something you may want to have a conversation with your legislator, you know, and say, hey, you know, I got an idea how we approach this in a way that's cooperative, and how long you think it would take for both sides of the aisle to come together and fix this problem. But that's awesome. I didn't know they were doing that in Virginia.
I think also, when you look at the school choice options, there's a lot more collaborative community sense of working together, and you don't see that as much with the districts. So for the charter school that Zena Mason went to, when we first started, we were using the buses from a private school. So we were collaborating and working around, to your point, but I've seen that more within the options working together. You see, you have private schools now, and then you have a micro homeschool, a micro school. They work, you know, they work more collaboratively together. But again, we have to change the narrative because of where we are now. That to be for one is to be against the other. And we know that the majority of the money goes to the traditional public school system. And so if we don't change the funding for each student, to your point, we're going to continue to have this battle where some are going to have and some are not going to have. And again, that hurts nobody but the child. So if we're going to support systems, sure, support a system, but please don't support a system that's going to hurt a child. I don't care what option it is. But if it's going to ultimately hurt a child or hinder a child, then we need to have a different conversation. But that's going to take the parent voice. Nobody's going to, we see with the demand of the number of applications that went in for the Opportunity Scholarship this year, parents aren't playing. Like legislators, school leaders, community leaders, you have to understand that parents are not playing with their children anymore. I thought I wasn't playing. But like I said, I'm an empty nester. So now I see even more parents are saying, this child's my responsibility. If this child goes left, you're gonna come to me. So I'm gonna navigate that. So this whole change legislatively, change in the community, change the dialogue, it comes from the parents. And we have to understand our power and our voice and use it wisely.
You know, the money too, just on the, talking about the money issue is all that a legislator usually is called about. We're constantly being asked about increasing these funds. And hopefully we passed it in the House budget to increase opportunity scholarships, and it's sitting in the Senate. So, so that means that we're hearing a lot from parents, and when it didn't get fully funded, we really have been hearing from them, and I'm always happy.
I won't say it was us,
but we did, and it was good to hear from everybody. But I will tell you that public schools, you know, are not funded from the same pot as the opportunity scholarships. So, you know, this is something that was allocated by the state legislature and is set aside in its own budget, so that, you know, we fund the public schools still at the same rate. The problem comes in when you start losing students because public schools are funded per student. So when you have that head count on, what day was that? 20th. So the public schools are, you know, I think that Congress should maybe change that, but I'm not in Congress, so I can talk to them, but I don't know that they will listen real close. But we have met the need that parents have asked for. Public schools are a little stressed by this, and the stress comes from thinking that the people are leaving because of we're providing funding. That is not what is happening, and 2 to 3% of the students are in, I believe it's maybe up to 3, it was 2 last time I looked, it's probably about 3% of students are opting to go to use the opportunity scholarships. And I don't know if the charter schools, are they included in that number, do you know?
I don't think that, not in that
I
number.
don't think so.
But I think overall, it's like 25% of overall, of families and communities are opting some type of school choice. So that's homeschool, that's private, right, and so it's about maybe 25%. I'm generous with that. But the conversation has to be why, and the conversation also has to be that 25% needed. Again, families are not leaving the traditional public school because they just want to. I mean, people are working, life is lifing, you know, people are doing, their child has a need, and wherever they're zoned for, it's just not working. It could be for whatever reason. Again, the conversation has to be from the lens of the child. If we're not looking at it from the lens of the child, we're doing children a disservice. That's in legislation, that's in families making decisions, that's when school capacity, where do we place a school? You know, private schools, again, they even have a harder push to open a school because they're going based on tuition. So you talk about the 20th day, there have been private schools, particularly in Charlotte, that closed down. Why? Because the parents left. And the parents said, you're not meeting the needs, and that school closed down because families left. I'm glad they had the choice, because if that school wasn't meeting the needs, it would have been just like if they were in the traditional and they were stuck in a school, right? So you want parents to have the options, and again, the conversation around education now, 2024, is different back in from 2000, from 2019. You know, when I was in school, it's just a different conversation, and just like everything else, we have to shift.
And I'll speak about the elephant in the room, because I drove an hour and a half. So I'm gonna make sure I'm genuine and authentic about this discussion. And I have my kids are at home, waiting on daddy. So let's keep it real. The traditional schools have not done well on the social level. I mean, you know, there's some stuff that's being taught, you know, that if my child came home and started talking about some of the stuff I'm hearing, I got enough problems. So don't hurt yourself. You know, don't do it to yourself. You already in enough trouble with performance academically. And now we got issues with the social aspect. And I'm gonna stop. I ain't gonna go deep, but I'm gonna just keep it real and say, look, I will be disserving you all if I'm not saying that the traditional public schools, from what I'm hearing from parents, when I'm in a room with just 5 parents and 10 parents, it's unbelievable, it's scary. And so, you know, we could talk academics all day long. We could talk money all day long. But there's an elephant in the room. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge for the traditional schools. And you talk about why there's this mass exodus. You're seeing, what's the number percentage? It's 25%. It's just gonna go up. Because I wouldn't tolerate it. I'll stop there, Semone.
Good stuff. All right, we have a question over here.
My concern is school athletics. Where are we at with, if they choose to go to another school and the taxpayer pay for it, are they allowed to come back to that public school and play the sport if that school doesn't offer it? Because our sports are taking a hit. especially at the middle school level. We can barely get enough kids to fill a team because they're bypassing middle school because of the state that school's in. And maybe if the high school is performing athletic-wise, they'll come back. If not, they don't.
Right.
And to me, athletics is a very important part of school. Teaches leadership, accountability.
Yeah.
So, is there anything about that? I know, I believe homeschool-wise, you can come back and play. If you're homeschool, you can play for the school in your district. What about the school of choice?
I believe that your local Board of Education can set policies that allow this people that are the students that want to come back and play athletics to be able to do that. That then you would set the parameters. You don't want to be recruiting from over there across town. What you want is specific policy that addresses that. We've done that in the past, 20-something years ago. Anyway, that allowed students by the board policy to come and be in the band, because they don't have a band usually, to play athletics, or if there's some other curriculum or something that's extremely finite, where you, like, let's say Latin 1 or 2, but, those different things, just not on athletic basis, but curriculum and, with social areas as well. So your Board of Education can set those policies. They should be able to do, a lot to affect those conversations and to be sure that those opportunities are allowed to the athletes. And I know they want to come and play, and it is important. It's character building. It's good for everything that we talk about. Athletics is just something very important in a child's education, and parents want that. Some people, like superintendents, and I don't know how yours feels about it here in Cumberland or ours, but there are folks that feel like that they shouldn't offer that option. But I believe that if you set the policy and a board policy, you can effectively serve the students and the school and the athletic departments.
And I also think that the community sees the need for athletics. You see the club, I have an athlete, goalie, Mason, my baby. Anyway, I digress. But, he went to a charter, but he still got picked up at college level, right? Because we were able to navigate with what we're dealing with. We loved the charter school, not the strongest soccer program, but we were able to navigate between that and the clubs in the community to get him to the next level. So the thing about the districts, change the policy, or families are going to work around it. That's really where we are. Private schools, we play private schools that have a strong academic and athletic program. Private schools have soccer teams, football teams, basketball teams. They're doing recruiting. So even if they're larger, there are options that if my child needs academically a private school or a public charter school, I find one with an academic program. If districts want to keep families to play in their district, then academically it has to be apples to apples, right? Because the leading drive for school is to educate academically. Other things can be pieced together to still get to the common goal, whether it's playing to build character in high school. Totally believe the reason why Mason went to college was because of soccer. He could give or take the athletics, right? The academics. But either you're gonna fix it, to your point, and make these, concessions, or family's gonna work around it. Because academics is gonna go first. That's just fine. It's not a policy.
All right, we've got like 5 minutes left.
That was my question.
You're good.
So I'm a homeschool mom. I've been a homeschool mom since my son was in the 4th grade because the public education system failed him.
And at the time, I did qualify for the opportunity scholarship, and granted, he's gonna be a junior this year. I know one of the things, and this may be more geared towards Diane, but I'm not sure the other two could have helped me. But I know at one point in time, they were talking about wanting to get the government or the state involved in helping us cover homeschool costs. Well, the whole purpose of me homeschooling is so that I can cater my education to fit the needs of my life, of my child. And there were things like Dennis said, I did not want my child learning in a public school system. And because of that, as a Christian, I'm able to incorporate Bible studies in with mine. So Diane, maybe, I mean, is that something we're still trying to push for, is getting the government involved in the homeschool? Because the whole purpose of us homeschooling is to remove our children from the indoctrination. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna state it like it is.
Well, and we have discussed it in groups, and I know that I have talked about it a little bit in our education committee. The big focus, though, has been trying just to get full funding for opportunity scholarships. But I agree with you. There is a whole network in homeschooling. It's amazing of the outcomes. I've been very impressed, even with all the options that are now out there. There are a lot of mothers that and fathers that have opted into continuing homeschooling, and they do a fabulous job. And you know what? Somebody's doing the teaching and providing the books and the curriculums and the things. And I know that some homeschool folks also have curriculums that they get online and work with colleges. So it's a very unique, still area that people are doing. I will tell you, with my two boys, there would have been no homeschooling, because I would have had to have had a psychiatrist, not a so God bless you, and I'm so glad you have done a marvelous job. I know your son, he is so wonderful, and you're doing a terrific job. But yes, I think there is a discussion, but it's still being discussed, trying to get all these other things funded. And we'll have to, I think, have a real conversation and maybe write a bill.
And we can't be nervous about the funding conversation, the money conversation. Homeschooling families pay taxes. They are paying taxes right now for a system that their children are not in. So they're paying double. They're paying for curriculum, and their money is going to the public school system for curriculum for those children sitting in the seats, right? So we really have to have a conversation about the funding model of where our funds are following our child. Yes, you wouldn't charge tuition to be at home, but even if that per pupil spending was less for the homeschooler, it would go a long way, because it's curriculum, it's books, it's electronics, iPads. In the traditional public, they can give out an iPad. They can do a ThinkPad, right? But for a homeschooling family who pay taxes, they have to pay it out of pocket. So again, even with the homeschooling, it's a fundamental, how are we going to fund education per child, per pupil?
And there is, people are whispering money following the child, but they're not saying it out loud yet.
Right.
So if that happened, if the money followed the child, that would solve that issue.
Absolutely.
I just want to take a moment before we end just to say thank you to Semone Pemberton for stepping up and allowing us to have this conversation, because it's not an easy conversation. And so as you can see, there's still a lot of questions, and we could sit here for another hour. So thank you, and I just want to give you a round of applause for your work.
Thank you.
Well, and thank all of you. So before we wrap up, for those who are online and maybe even those in the room, one of the questions that I know is going to come up is the enrollment period and where they go to enroll. So
For the opportunity
scholarship, yeah.
Yeah, I can take that. So for the opportunity scholarship, there is a application timeline, and so for every year, the application period for the opportunity scholarship is in February. February 1 to March 1. So that's where they take all applications in for the Opportunity Scholarship and the ESA Plus, which are for children with disabilities. The key to that is that once you enter your application, every application goes into a lottery, same as with a charter school. So how many open seats based on funding is open for that upcoming school year determines how many lottery seats are going to be pulled. So every child, even if you have one that is on in 3rd grade and you now have a new kindergartner, that new kindergartner has to go into that application process and into the lottery. So rule of thumb, February of that year is application period for the Opportunity Scholarship, which is on the North Carolina State Education Assistance Authority website. I can give that to you personally if you need it. But they are the administrators of the Opportunity Scholarship and oversee that application process and the lottery. So for the upcoming school year, which would be, let's say it's February 2025, you are applying for the 25-26 school year. So every February is the application period for the upcoming school year for the Opportunity Scholarship and the ESA Plus program.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, before we go, were there any other questions? Oh, there it is, okay.
I just wanted to say,
I'm glad you were mentioning the timelines, but also a lot of people online have a misunderstanding about the priorities of disbursements.
Sure.
And so I just wanted to say it's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and if you fall into the lower income brackets, you have a priority. And so the monies do go to the lower income families in that order. Tier 1, which is the lower income, and then once that whole bracket is been funded, it goes to tier 2. And so we are that, I mean, I follow it online all the time.
No,
People are all the time saying, we're giving it to the rich people first. They are not.
Yeah.
It is by tier level, and so always the lower incomes have priority. And if you don't apply during the month of February, it's first come, first serve. So all of the priorities 1 through 4 will be filled, and then you're going down the list by first come, first serve. So it's super important, and I post online on Twitter, on Facebook, on every place I can during the month of February. Don't forget to enroll your child in the North Carolina Opportunity
You don't
Scholarship.
have to take it, just go on.
Yeah.
I say the same thing.
Yeah.
You can always turn it down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And that is a point for those that say about, Elon Musk or wealthy. I'm so glad that you said that. I had it written down, but I'm glad that I should have said that. But it does initially serve the first, most in need first. That's why we have a wait list right now of 52,000 people, because we had 72,000 applications. To your point, we gave all to tier 1 and only a small amount was left for tier 2. So everyone else is on a wait list right now. So to your point, they do award or make offers based on income. That is tier 1, then tier 2, then tier 3, tier 4. So will we ever get to tier 4? It depends on the funding. It depends on how much funding goes in. So thank you for saying that, because that is absolutely
We're
true.
gonna get tier 2 clear as soon as possible.
Right. If nothing else, tier 2, right? Yeah, because those are the most in need. And if we had it as far as eligibility before, tier 1 and tier 2 would go into the lottery and be offered seats. Because of the demand, it's now not tier 2 on a wait list, where before may have not been.
Also,
But that's all about funding.
there's just, sorry.
You want to work for my team?
Right.
Yes.
This is a passion of mine every day. So the other thing is, that I'm sorry, it left my brain.
I'm sorry.
It was
Yeah.
important about position.
Yeah.
I'll talk after you.
So I first learned about opportunity scholarships the other day at the library, and I'm going to be a new mother, so I'm interested in this. So, how long has this been going on for here in this county, opportunity scholarships? And Ms. Wheatley said that it's a legislature-approved allotment. So does that mean that we need to make sure we're voting in people into the legislature every single time to keep this?
Yes.
We did not set her up.
Yes. So it was originally introduced in 2014, 15 school year, there were some opposition against it, so it really got rolling, I would say, in 15, 16. And every year, our legislative body has grown the number of open seats based on funding. So initially, it started at $4,200, and so you will see that it's grown to be now 90% of the per pupil spending amount in the public school. So, and that's the ones most in need because it's, you know, it's based on income. So 2014 is your answer as far as when did it start, but every year it has gradually gotten stronger and it has allotted more money in the scholarship, and that is only because of demand, I will say, because more people are asking for it, and so.
Just an observation, but what I take away from this today is that we know that we've got public schools that are not providing the proper education or resources or whatever. And it could be even the staff retainment. If we want to assure, they keep making excuses about all this money leaving public school. In my opinion, why don't they find out what they need to do with their culture change? What do they need to do with their vision? And why don't they work on why, when a parent is leaving public school, not the ones that never come, but the ones that are leaving, why are we not asking, why are you leaving? And if it is because it's low performing, then if that school has traditionally been low performing, why hasn't our county done something to address that? The questions need to be asked because we're circumventing what needs to be done, and that is addressing our public school system and say, what are you doing to fix it?
Well, and when you say that, you gotta look at your boards of education that set the policy, and really, your county should be as good as your board of education, or your board, school board, and that, not only that, as your superintendent. So you, those of you that are running for your boards of education are able to solve a whole lot of the problems inside your district, inside your schools. And you know that we can all say that low performing, but there's a lot of reasons why schools are not performing better, and it's has to do with things that, you know, we all whisper about, but we don't look at everybody and say, oh my God, teachers need to be able to discipline children. Parents need to be involved in their children's education. We go through that whole list, and we all know what it is. But the folks that are going to change that and set those policies are the people that you're going to vote for to serve your community on your local boards of education.
And the only thing I'll say to that is that boards do change policy. That's in every option, right? So private schools have governing boards. Charter schools have governing boards. The success of private, whether it's homeschool, the mama is the governing board, right? Or whether it's in-person private or it's public charter, we are able to make the changes needed in that school based on what the problem is. So again, board chair of a charter school, we saw that our curriculum wasn't meeting the needs of our children based on the year assessments. We did 2 years of that curriculum. It was a vote. We moved to another curriculum. It was very simple. In the larger districts, they have a lot of red tape that take a long time to make those changes. My hope is that the traditional public school will lessen the red tape to make changes based on that community, that assigned school, so that quickly children can get what they need without families having to leave. But what we do know is at the end of the year, if you say my child's getting ready to be retained, and I haven't heard from you all year, or I've been trying to work with you, I gotta find something else coming into 4th grade, or 1st grade, or middle school, or high school. So, for accountability to parents, private schools have governing boards, and public charter schools have governing boards, just like the larger school districts. They usually have terms. You need to go to those governing board meetings. They're open meetings, they're under the open meetings law. Now I'm not sure, let me say that about public charter, I'm not sure about private, but if your private school doesn't want you to know when they're having a meeting or you can't talk to the school leader, you can't talk to the board chair. Is that the right environment you want for your school? You want a school that's accountable to you. And if that school is not accountable, then you go to your next option.
Yes.
So,
You're
yeah, I did. So I wanted to say one more thing about priority, which is, was it said already, if you do receive a scholarship, your family has another higher priority even through the tier system.
I need you to be on my
So-
team. That is so
So
right.
your child will be receiving the same scholarship on a continuous basis, so your child doesn't get pulled in and out. You don't have to worry about not getting the scholarship the next year. Your child can stay in the school that you've chosen. That's one. And second is well, that one went away too. But that one is really important, that you have that.
Yeah, so for the Opportunity Scholarship, and ESA Plus, so you're doing good. I need your card after. But I have a team of 15 moms that's all they do is answer questions. That's what I'm saying. I'm really serious about that. But, for the Opportunity Scholarship and the ESA Plus, once you go through the lottery and you're offered a seat and you take it, that's your scholarship until graduation. But every year you have to renew both scholarships because one, you need to show that your child still needs the services under ESA, and what is your income for that tax year for the Opportunity Scholarship. So you can take that scholarship and again, move to another private school. So again, private schools, even receiving the scholarship, are still accountable to the parents because if your private school is not working, I can take my scholarship and move to this private school over here if it's participating. But great point, it's till graduation, you only go through the lottery once, but you do have to do a renewal application to show you're still qualified for the scholarship for that year.
Last thing is that, the opportunity scholarship is by family. So if you have multiple children, you don't have to worry that one child might get it and the other child won't. If you get the scholarship, all the children that you applied will all get the scholarship, so
Based
all
on
your
that,
children.
yeah.
Yeah, so it is dispersed by families, not by individual child. You're not gonna have one child that gets
Right.
9.
Right.
That's the
right.
last thing. That was it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
She's right, she's right.
Yeah.
You want to come take a seat right?
Yeah.
She's a product of home.
Yeah.
Heather, if you want to come up, I'll no.
Is that working now?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I don't know what I did. Okay, last question, I promise I'm done. Is it true, you may have to let me know, because I'm not quite sure, but we were given some statistics or some facts that a lot of the legislature for the school boards that they're voting on is like from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. There's like really nothing new that they're voting on to keep up with the time, so to speak, as far as education. Because they're saying there's a lot of policies that the local school boards are voting on or keeping that are 50 years old.
It's been 25, 27 years since I was on the Board of Education. I know that schools have been changing but they may have some older policies. Each new school board has their ideals and their plans. Sometimes it's not always the school board, sometimes it's the superintendent that also, sets all the policies, really, they hire him. It's their biggest job. But definitely, those public schools that are changing, Heather, and some are keeping a lot of their students and doing a really good job. So, I don't know about their older policies. I don't even really get to communicate with anything they want to ask me about money. So, usually, and the curriculum and all that can come later. But you need to look at having a school board that is going to meet the needs of the community.
Excellent. Anything else before we close out? All right. Okay. All right. I want to take a moment to thank Fayetteville Academy. They're sitting in the center here for coming out, setting up your display. I also want to thank Trinity Christian Center or Christian School, for joining us as well. We appreciate it. Also, Fayetteville Tech donated this space for us, so big thanks to them. Also, Baldino's, Peter Papa's back there in green. Logo Works, they're not here today, but they also sponsored this, and of course, well, you can learn more about me at faithforward.com, as well as Gloria Otis, who is not in here. Oh, there she is, biggest day, sorry. Not biggest day, back there, my bad. Gloria, back there, she's part of the team, and Heather as well, she's part of the team as well. And I want to thank all of you, and especially our panelists, for traveling in. It is a blessing to have experts and not opinion. Because a lot of the things that we've heard over the last, a lot of things that I've heard over the last year was a lot of opinion, it was a lot of politics, and we were forgetting the children. So it is incredibly important for us to have experts who are willing to travel in on a Saturday, free of charge, and help all of us as a community. So thank you all. Their information is up on the board if you want to reach out to them. Of course, they're here as well, so you can speak with them. But also in this program, there's a bio for each of them, and then the website for Parents for Educational Freedom, as well as School Choice of North Carolina, or School Choice North Carolina is also in there. So the additional resources that you can look into if you're interested. Thank you all. We are dismissed. Take some donuts.
Let me know when.
It don't stop.
And that's good. That's called good trouble. That's what that's called. Johnson was called that good trouble.